talking from personal experience in terms of where I am in the world, I've definitely noticed that there's still a bit of an old-fashioned concept. Hi guys, and welcome back to LVH Talks. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. And if you've got any perspectives or comments on today's topic, please post them below so we can talk it out. Okay, so women's sport is the conversation that we're having today. And the reason for that is because recently the women's England football team just won the Euros, which is amazing for England. I think everyone was in high spirits when it came to that news, so well done to them, they did amazing. And I wanted to talk about the perspectives around female sport now and women in sport, and has there been changes when it comes to our perspectives on that subject, or have we still got a long way to go when it comes to how we view women in sport? So first of all, let's talk about why this is so important, because I don't think in some cases people understand the importance of having that sense of equality when it comes to women in sport. But why is it important to have women in sport? So other than the obvious, which is, equal opportunity, I think, something that we all strive to have in life is having hobbies and interests that we both find enjoyable and interesting. But not only that, but I feel like it increases, your social life and your social circle. You get to meet people you wouldn't normally meet. It kind of opens up your world in that way. Exercise is known to lower levels of depression and anxiety. So just in terms of not just physical health, but mental and emotional health as well, sport is really good. But aside from that, I think one thing that most women have experienced, and men too, I'm not dismissing men on this front, but because we're talking about women in sport, body image is a massive issue for women, and probably always has been, but particularly, this generation, few generations before, that problem and the difficulties that women have faced with their body image has definitely increased. And so sport gives women a way of developing confidence, not only in their skills and in what they're capable of, but in their appearance, in who they are. And that is, sport is a way of doing that. It's a way of giving women a way of feeling good within their own bodies and within their own skin. So it is a very important part of all of our lives, and therefore there should be equal opportunity with it. Now, in terms of perspectives changing, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this is very much going to come down to culture, different cultures, because in every culture there's variations of progression, and where each culture is at on certain subject matters is vastly different to another. So it really does depend, I think, on where you are in the world, on what that perspective is. But just talking from personal experience in terms of where I am in the world, I've definitely noticed that there's still a bit of an old-fashioned concept and mentality when it comes to women's sport and women in sport. And I think that mentality goes along the lines of women's sport is not as entertaining or exciting as men's sport. And what I find interesting about this perspective is that it tends to come from people who don't watch women's sport. It's almost like those people who say they don't like a certain type of food, but they've never tried it. And to be fair, I'm quite guilty of that myself in some cases. But it's sort of that mentality of, I've not even tried it, I've not even sat down to watch it or given it a chance, and yet I'm deeming it as, unimportant or uninteresting. I don't find it entertaining, even though I've not really given it a chance. So I feel like there's this almost perspective that is stuck with some people, and it almost is like a collective mindset that I think has been passed around. It's almost like a conversation that's had between certain groups of people, that is just how it is. Women's sport isn't exciting, it isn't interesting, and therefore we're not going to watch it. But I think that the reality is that it's actually very much the opposite, and people tend to only realise that when they give it the chance that it deserves. And I think the problem comes from, comparing men's sport and women's sport too frequently. We like to do that in society. We like to compare and contrast. But in this particular subject matter, I don't think that's actually necessary. Equality is necessary, but I don't think that comparing men's sport and women's sport is valid. I think that they deserve to be their own genres. They deserve to be separate in that respect and seen as separate. I don't think it's about comparing, because I think you have a different experience depending on which one you watch, and I did watch the final on Sunday, the women's final, and that was actually the most exciting football match I've watched in a while. Now, that won't be everyone's opinion, but that was definitely how I felt and how I came away from watching that. And I didn't see it as, that was more exciting to me than a men's football match. It was just its own thing. It was its own genre. I saw it as it's separate. And I think that that's how we've got to look at sport and genders in sport, is that it's different. You have a different experience. And not just with the genders, but you also have a different experience no matter which type of match you're watching. If it's a football match, you're going to have a different experience to if you watch a rugby match, to if you watch golf, to if you watch tennis. It gives you a different experience every time you watch different sport. And I feel the same way about watching different genders within that sport as well. And I think it's good to just have a different mentality when you watch both. Recognize that it may not be the same, because biologically speaking, men and women are different, and so you're not going to get the same thing out of them. But that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. It's when you try and make it into something that it's not going to be. That's when, you kind of set yourself up for a disappointment, much like you do a TV program or a TV show, right? If you set high expectations and you go into it thinking it's going to be one thing and then it's not what you thought, you're going to come out of it feeling a bit disappointed. When you just let it be what it is, it surprises you and it's amazing. And I really feel like I was saying, the perspectives that people have, they're very outdated, and I don't think they actually come from any... I don't think it's because they've sat down and watched loads of women in sports. I think it's just a passed on perspective that has stuck, and it's one that can be unravelled quite quickly. Now, there was a survey done with sports fans, and within that survey, 84% of sports fans said they were interested in women's sport. Now, that's a high figure, and that's great to see and very encouraging, I think. But even more surprising, 51% of those sports fans were male. And it shows that women's sport have a gender balanced audience. That it isn't just women liking women's sports, men liking men's sports. There's this gender balance audience, which is great. And again, that sense of appreciation and validation is what needs to be seen now, because these women within sport, they work just as hard, right? They work just as hard. They are skilled in their own way, just like men are. Men are skilled in their own way. It may be unique to each sport, but they deserve the credit because they work just as hard and they're just as talented. Now, there was a poll done as well in 2021, and it was it was a way of trying to understand why it felt as though there was still more of an interest in male sport over women's sport. Now, 40% of these people who did this poll said it was a lack of media coverage. Now, that makes a lot of sense to me, because if the media is responsible for a lot of the things that we're interested in and know about, we rely on media to tell us what's going on and to inform us of, things we're unable to know about without it, right? Things that go on around the world, things that happen miles and miles away from us. We rely on media to tell us about these things. And so the lack of media coverage in female sport over the years has definitely generated and created a public of people who don't show an interest in it because it's not put in front of them. It's not made visible to them. It's not something that's accessible to them. Therefore, anything that's more difficult to get access to is going to have fewer interests, right? 30% of people said it was marketing, right? And another 30% of people said it was a lack of knowledge of teams and players. So if you think about those three percentages, they're very similar to each other and they all coincide and connect with each other. Ultimately, is it even about sexism anymore? Is it just about media coverage, what's become accessible? And is the fact that women's sport in general is becoming more accessible, becoming more, it's being put in front of people more now, is that actually going to change how interested people are in women's sport and change their perspectives on it in general? That's the question now, I think. But we can only hope that we do get to a point where we stop feeling like things are only capable, certain people are only capable of certain types of things. We've got to get to a point where we actually start seeing ourselves as being able to achieve as much as anyone else. We have to start seeing things that way and giving opportunity to more people. And I do think that it's improving, but I still think it's got a long way to go. What are your thoughts on the subject anyway? I'm going to put it in your hands now. Comment below what you think about women's sport. Do you think it's improving? Do you think it's still stuck where it was? What's it like where you are? What are the perspectives where you are? Is it something that you've noticed? Is it something that's being talked about? Let me know in the box below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.